Hello, lovely people. Welcome to another episode of the DevRel Show. Uh, you know, always excited to do that. Always excited to do that because I told you many times. I know it's called the DevRel Show with Fred, and it's just because I'm the one hosting to the show. But that show is really not about me. It's about the guest. It's about the amazing people I have. And you know what? Today is no different. I have Jeff with me. How is life, Jeff?
Things are good here. How are you?
I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good. I just came back from Europe. I was in Berlin for CIVO Navigate, and we decided to bring all the teams. So we stay there to do a team offsite, which is pretty amazing because we're remote only or fully remote company, and we're a little bit across the world. And we hired a lot of people recently. So there are people that I've never met in person before. So it was just an amazing time to spend with friends. But as much as I was traveling a lot in the previous DevRel life, a little less right now, I've never been good with time zones difference and jet lag. And finally, today, I feel like I'm back to my normal self. Like I'm the kind of person who need the general like 1 day per hour of difference
Oh
type
yeah,
of person. Yeah, which is a pain in the ass. When I was traveling, like 80% of my time, I live in North America. I was often going to Europe, to Asia, and sometimes it was like 3, 4, 5 days. So I was like starting to feel okay at the new location, and I was coming back home. So I was basically all the time jet lag. So I'm not complaining. It's a first world problem. I had the
right.
pleasure to travel to so many places, but just to answer your question, I am fine now because I feel a little less tired, a little more in sync with back to the time where I live.
That is excellent. Yeah, I'm the opposite, honestly. Like I've made trips to India and Japan and plenty of trips to Europe, and I feel like I wake up the next day and I'm just ready to go, and it's fine. Very
I don't like people like you.
well.
I'm not.
Let's ask this: are you a morning person?
I'm a no time person. I mean, like, I'm not a late time person. I'm not a
Yeah,
morning person. I feel like end of the morning, beginning of the afternoon is kind of like my best time. So I don't like to wake up too early, but I don't like to go to bed too late. So
yeah.
I'm kind of like a weird person.
You're an afternoon person. I get it.
I think so. I think I'm an afternoon person.
So I am very much a morning person. I think that's a symptom of that. Is like if I'm up,
Definitely.
I'm ready to go. Now, will I crash at 2 o'clock sometimes? Absolutely. But
Yeah.
getting up in the morning and getting rolling, even if I've had a long overnight red eye or something, it's just how you get used to it. Especially when I had little kids, that was especially important to be able to do.
Oh, yeah.
But
Yeah, no, I hear you.
they're older now.
Yeah, no, that's it. And I went strong by saying I don't like people like you. It's mostly because I'm jealous. I would like to have the same
But
capacity, especially when I was traveling a lot. Now it's fine. It's just once in a while I feel a little bit like shitty and out of saying, but it's just once in a while. But prior to that, it was all the time.
yeah,
But yeah, again, not complaining here at all. I've had the pleasure to meet people around the world, to speak at different conferences. Like it's a privilege to being able to do that. It's just sometimes it's a little less glamor than people think it is because planes, airport, as much as you're used to do those, it's not always the exciting life. But the
no,
end result of it is pretty cool, though.
agreed. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think people view a lot of DevRel roles that involve travel as like these super glamorous. Oh, you get to go to all these cool places. And while yes, I do,
it's true.
remember the price I had to pay to get there.
Exactly,
Yes.
exactly. And Chris, nice for you to join live. Let's go. This is exactly what we do. We're doing that live stream. And Chris, just a reminder, we talked a while ago for you to be on the show. Didn't happen for different reasons. Would be always happy to have you on the show. So just ping me if you're still watching. Would love to have you as a guest. On that note, Jeff, who are you? For people that don't know you, please tell us a little more about yourself.
It's a great question. So I'm still getting used to saying this, but I am the head of developer relations at DigitalOcean. And I think tomorrow is my 1 month anniversary. So I'm very new to the company.
That
Uh,
is.
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. You can go ahead.
Oh, okay. No, I was just going to say, so it's really kind of a new experience to be able to sit and talk about a company that I've only just recently joined. But when you and I talked about doing this podcast, that was 6 months ago. I was in a very different place and a very different job. And so I'm really glad that I had the opportunity to get on here and talk about what I'm doing at DigitalOcean. So it's good.
Yeah, and it's your employer has a special place in my heart because 4 years ago I was working at DigitalOcean. I was on the developer relations team, and I didn't stay too long at DigitalOcean, and not because I didn't like the company. I love the company. I love the product. I love the fact that like DigitalOcean is trying to like simplify the access to cloud. There's so many benefits about like having a smaller cloud provider compared, let's say, to the big trees. So love the product, love the people. It's just things happen in life, and I had to move on for different reasons, but I'm still like cheering up for DigitalOcean every time I can. So when you told me like, hey Fred, because as you said, we scheduled that thing a long time ago, and when you said like, hey, you know what, my infos are changing, like this is what you need to have like for started promotion and devrelshow, was like, oh fuck yeah, I didn't see that on LinkedIn. Amazing. I'm just like happy for you and happy for DigitalOcean to have someone like you that's going to help them to continue to give love to developers, basically.
Thank you. Yeah, I found that that's been one of the patterns across my career, is that I'm always trying to simplify on behalf of developers. And so as I think about the ways that DigitalOcean has gone about it, I think that their views and my views on how we present content, how we think about tutorials, and even just the user interface to the applications, they're pretty aligned. Let's make it as easy as possible. There's no reason to make this a 300 level class just to figure out how to spin up a server.
Yes, no, exactly. And the thing though is that right now I'm still a little bit in the same spot that I was at DigitalOcean. Like KubeFirst, which was our main product, we just rebranded to Construct. But like the goal of Construct is to make the cloud native space easier for people. It's to let you, do what you do best, which is basically deploying your application on a cluster. But there is so many other things you need to manage around it that we try to simplify that for you. And recently we got acquired by the CEO of Civo, which is also another small cloud provider. So we're still really close with like the small. And when I say small cloud provider, I never see that as a negative thing. Just want to be clear with people. It's just the reality. Like compare a DigitalOcean or Civo compared to AWS or Google, Microsoft, it's not the same size.
No.
But there's a lot of benefits about that too. I mean, like it's not like you just don't look at the size of like, oh yeah, they're not as big. Like maybe they're not going to be like working well or not going to serve my need, which is usually mostly never the case. I mean, like a smaller cloud provider will do a good job. So basically, I'm doing your job right now, so I'm going to stop that. But Jeff, tell me, you just said it's a new job. You've been there for 2 months.
Yeah.
How is life at DigitalOcean now?
It's good. It is. I think fast-paced is probably the right way to describe it. Like I said, I've only been here a month, but I was just looking at a list I made, and I've got about 18 work streams I'm going all at once, trying to spin up some new content, do shows like this, but also make sure that we're getting some tutorials out. We've got some launches coming up that need some TLC for demos and all sorts of content there. So there's lots and lots to do. And we're also hiring for those people that are watching. We're looking for some more folks to join us. So you can check out digitalocean.com/careers if you're interested in that.
Please do that. Again, nice company to work for. You would work for Jeff. You would work with people with like Chris. I mean, like many people that I know, they're not there anymore, but I'm pretty sure like they got replaced by other amazing people. I really love the culture too. I can't remember what was like the 3 or 4 principle, but one was like we lead with love or something like that. Like they had the word love in it, and I just love that.
Yeah. I will tell you, the first month has been pretty incredible. I've met a ton of amazing people, and just to see the way that they all really believe in the mission really goes a long way.
Yeah, which is important. I mean, don't get me wrong, a job is a job, and most of us wouldn't do what we do if it was not the fact that we need money. We may do things that are related. Like I was running meetups before being a developer advocate. I was writing blog posts. I was speaking at conferences, but I was doing those on my, let's say, home term and like during my free time. But like maybe I wouldn't do that full time because I have other hobbies that I would like to do. But especially for a role like ourselves, I firmly believe that like you need to believe in the mission, you need to be passionate about the product to be able to be successful, because it's like there is no bullshitting in a role. Like you connect with human, you need to be true to yourself.
No, and we'll get into like the roles I've had previously to this, but I feel like to be in a role where you are in developer relations for a tech product company, a developer focused product, you have to believe in the mission. You have to be a fan of the technology. You have to be a user yourself, because I think if you try to do it any other way, it doesn't come off as authentic. It doesn't come off as something that is believable by the audience themselves, and you end up looking a lot more like a shill, just somebody that's there to advertise and talk about the thing. And so you're also kind of co-opting, like a company like DigitalOcean is willing to put their faith in what I'm doing, and the way that I speak and the message that I carry. They're willing to trust me with that, but I'm also trusting them to make sure that they're not putting me in a bad situation where all of a sudden they've got a bunch of terrible products and I'm embarrassed to represent their things, right? So it very much goes both ways.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And before I ask you another question about your role, we have a question from Dan Vega. Let's say, Jeff, do you have any LBs, like collecting things, maybe?
That's funny. So obviously there's a ton of Funko Pop figurines here behind me, and those are all real. I get that question quite often in conference calls. But it started as, my kids and I were out someplace and they found a character they liked. And I was like, oh, it's like $8. Yeah, let's get one. And so we got a couple, and then it was 5, and then it was 10. And my wonderful, wonderful wife and all of her patience was like, what are we doing with these? Where are these going to go? And she raised a very valid question. And so I was like, oh, you know what? I've got some room on the wall in my office. I'll put up a little shelf. And we put those there, but now I had room for like 10 more. And so we added a couple more, and they were all on this shelf. And I was like, I think I need another shelf. And so that grew. And then this is like the third iteration of shelves as this collection has kind of grown. Now, I will be honest, I probably haven't bought one in 2 years.
Okay.
I'll look once in a while, but rarely does there something that really catches my attention anymore. But I have you can't see it here because this collection on this wall is only about 40% of the whole collection.
Oh, God.
And so there is an entire wall here in front of me with bookshelves, and up on the top, I have a huge Marvel and Star Wars collection. And then there's a whole rail that goes above me here. And there's probably another 150 on there that are just random movies and Ghostbusters and Back to the Future and all sorts of stuff up there. So yeah, but they're pretty much all contained in this room, which makes it easy.
That's nice. I mean, like, be careful because you're gonna need to buy a new house soon to have like a room specifically for them. But I can understand they're quite addictive. I mean, I only have one. I only have Michael Scott from The Office, and I promised myself that like I will only buy this one because I try to have a little bit of like a minimalist type of approach to life, but at the same time, I mean, like, I like my Michael so much, and I'm like, there is so many others that I would like to have, but like I would be afraid, and I'm not saying that in a negative way, but like to go to like the direction that you took, and like, oh, you buy more and you buy more and you buy more, and like you end up like you need to put shelves to put those, which is amazing. But I have a mixed feeling where like, oh, I want to restrain myself, but I want to do it, and but I'm just happy like you have an amazing collection.
Yeah, thank you. It is one of those things that kind of grew and grew for a while, and I was really paying attention, and I wanted to make sure I got that specific one or whatever. But anymore, like, it just makes an incredible backdrop. I mean, when I get on conference calls with people that haven't met me before, that's always their first reaction is like, whoa, what is that? So
I totally agray. I moved. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Most people don't believe it's real. They think it's just a fake background of something, but it's very much real. You can reach back and grab any one of them.
Jeff is like, let me show you. It's a real thing. But You know what? I like the first seconds when you join, I was like, oh, is it real or not? And I remember who I'm talking to. I have people in the show like that have like huge Lego collections, and like it's a geeky stuff. I mean, it makes sense that like it's a real thing. But yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. And I really need to invest in my background. I moved to a new house like 3 months ago. Even the wire are still like a mess behind me, which I hate so much because
you'll find time. I was very fortunate, and we can get into kind of a little bit of my history as well, but I started working from home in 2007. And so, I've had 16 years in this room to think about what could be cool and where should I put some stuff, and like anything that like is personally mine, right? Like there's a full-size Captain America shield on the wall over there. Like there's a lot of that kind of stuff that I would never hang up in my house somewhere, but having this cool little room to myself that has a video studio and all the places that I work, and like I collect baseball cards too. So like there's lots and lots of things in this room that this is just my little place. So I think it's important for anybody, if you can have a little spot in your house that's just yours, it's cool to have.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So no, thanks for the questions, Dan. In any cases, that was a topic that I was going to bring at some point because it's in my face. I see that background now with Jeff, and I was like, I need to talk about that. So great questions. Let me go back to your role though, because I had another question. I know I misunderstood. It's been 1 month, not 2 months, so it's really new. But still, you had the interview process. You discussed about the role. I'm always interested to know more about what's the vision for the role, what's the responsibility about like a specific titles, because in other type of role in the industry, like you basically know exactly what people do depending on their title. In devrel, it depends on the company, it depends on the focus, depending on like in which team you're a part of. Are you your own team? Are you part of product, marketing, sales sometimes? So just curious to like, what's your vision, or what was the initial discussion, or what are you thinking about in the first month being like the head of developer relations at DigitalOcean? What does that mean?
Yeah. So I kind of think of this like a flywheel. So for those of you that aren't familiar with the flywheel concept, right, it's something that you can spin hard once and then it'll just keep going and going and going for yourself. And that was something that I learned during my time at Amazon. But the thing that stands out to me about DigitalOcean and what we're doing with devrel very much applies to that kind of flywheel concept. So the initial spin, the initial push on that wheel is getting to know the product and understanding what's happening with our product team. What are they working on? What are they launching? What is the latest and greatest? What are the customer complaints that they see the most often? But understand what the real state of our product is. And with a heavy emphasis on what's new. What are we launching next week and the month after that? Our job as part of, as developer relations folks here at DO is primarily to focus on like, how do we use that stuff? I often call us developer zero, right? I want to be the first one to get my hands on it. I want to take it apart. I want to understand what works, what doesn't work. What do I like? What do I not like? And I'll provide some feedback as well as the rest of my team to the product team to say, hey, this works really well. I wish this was simpler. This is hard to understand. This works well in the console, but it doesn't work well at the CLI, that kind of stuff, right? But now being a team that is probably the most intimately familiar with our products across the entire organization, it's our responsibility to tell that story too. So here's how I think we should use this thing. Here's some cool ideas I had for how to build it. Start to become kind of a content generation factory where we're going to be building a lot of both short form and long form video content. But with all of that also comes a written version of all of those things. So if I'm going to do a live tutorial on how to build serverless functions like we'll do later, I'm also going to have a written version of that is available as a blog post or a tutorial or something like that. And we take all of that content and all of those stories and we start to bundle them up into really compelling presentations. Sometimes those are for our customers, but quite often they're at events, right? We in devrel speak at events all over the world. And the only way you get accepted to speak at those kinds of events is to have a good story to tell. Mm-hmm. And so we take those stories, not necessarily like, here's how you build a thing on serverless functions at DigitalOcean, but it's like, here's how I built a really cool thing. And I want to tell that story. And by the way, it also happens to include some things that I used at DigitalOcean. But those stories start to emerge, and we use those to write presentations and workshops and all sorts of things and ship those out to conferences all over the world. My goal next year is to be, our team hit about 24 events around the world. I would say probably, 60% of those are probably in the United States, but we definitely plan to be in India, plan to be in Europe a few times. So there's good opportunities everywhere. But now we're making all of this content and we're pushing stuff on social media and we're going to events and meeting people in person. Our next responsibility is around understanding what customers like and don't like. We are on the front lines of all of that. And so we get to spend a lot of our time hearing from people that are like, hey, I'm using this thing and I just wish it would do this one other thing. I can have a very empathetic, meaningful conversation with someone in an event, but something needs to come from that. It can't just be the conversation. And so we gather that feedback, we assemble it all, and then we work with the product teams to say, hey, here over the last month, here's what we've heard. Here are the things that our customers are really asking for. As you're thinking about your timelines and your backlog, these are the things you might want to continue to add to those things. And then they go build some of that stuff, and then the cycle kind of continues. We try out the new thing they created, and on it goes. So that's generally the way that I view the work that we're going to be doing at DigitalOcean. But I don't think that's wildly different from how most people think about DevRel.
No, I don't think so. Sometimes yes, though, but I feel like those people may not totally understand developer relation, and that's super pretentious of me saying that. But like, I have a really specific vision about what I consider being developer relation because I'm doing that for like a very long time now.
Yeah.
But I totally agree with everything. And we're talking about something really important where like you gather the feedback and you bring the feedback to the product team to try to either confirm that you're going in the right direction or trying to implement things that you didn't thought about, influence the roadmap. And I think it's an important part of the role too. I mean, like, people saw us mostly speaking at events, doing videos on YouTube, live stream, those kind of things that are more like us to other people, but like it's a two-way street. I mean, like,
Yes.
we are developer advocates. And I think it's why a couple of years ago, many companies went from like evangelist role, like the title evangelist, to advocate, because this is basically what we're doing. Like, we're advocates for the developer community or DevOps or GitOps community, but like for the technical community, because it's not just about like, we're not there to sell our product. Hopefully, I hope you're going to be successful with my product, and I hope you're going to use it. But like, my job is to help you being successful, and part of it is to bring the feedback to the product team. So I love that you mentioned that like in your definition.
Totally agree. I think that's one of the most important pieces, and I think it's interesting to remember that people think about developer advocacy, and they often think, oh, they're advocating for their company or they're advocating for their product, and it's actually the opposite. I find myself frequently in arguments with our product team about what is the best thing for our customer. I am actually a hired employee of a company meant to be there to make sure customers are getting what they want. Because it's very easy for a product team to have their own vision and their own roadmap about how this should work or what should be done. But if they're not serving the people that are using their products every day, which most of them are, right? You can build a product and never use it. I found that quite frequently when I was on the Amazon Alexa team. There were large parts of our organization, including the engineering org, that had never built an application for Alexa, but they were the ones building the tools that build applications for Alexa, right? And so it was odd to me to think that there's people that are building for this platform that don't actually use this platform. So how could they know what it is that customers want or where their pain points are? And that's where folks like us come in, right?
Yeah, and you bring such good point. I mean, it applied to everything, even outside of tech. I mean, I was in that hotel last week, and I was like, those people that created that like bathtub / shower, they never used it. I
Right.
mean, like it was a pain in the ass. Like the faucet was in the place where it was taking too much space, and every time I was trying to like just get water on me, I was pushing on the I don't call it, like the thing that stopped the flow of the water, and like that was just like a bad experience. And I was like, I think we fixed that shower bathtub thing like years and years ago. Like, we should know how to do that. And I'm like, that's good looking, but that absolutely not useful. And I was like, I don't know. I don't think they used what
Nope.
they built, and that made me thought about tech. Like there's so many products sometimes that I don't have the only truth. I'm not saying how I use things is the perfect way or it's the only way, but I mean, like, if someone with a lot of experience, and I feel like I'm not that stupid, struggle to use sometimes some products for developers, I mean, like, how, like, did you try it, or did you ask someone to try it, or did you like use it more than just like, I built it? So like, use it, like, become a user, dog food your stuff. I
Yes,
think it's
dog
important.
fooding is key. And it doesn't just apply to tech, right? shower makers are the same way.
Yes.
And I do feel that way. If I travel internationally, I found this in Japan, I found this in some European countries. The shower doesn't seem to have a wall between me and the rest of the bathroom. It's just like a little flexible glass panel. And it's like, I'm going to get this bathroom all wet. Why haven't we figured this out yet?
I know. Yeah. Now we're gonna go. I was going to continue to talk about showers because I experienced showers in different countries. I know, like in India, is like part of it. The thing, like you don't have wall, and it's just like it's part of like you're gonna have water only in your restroom, bathroom, but like it's the culture way.
Yep.
So it's not that like they don't know how to fix it, but like in some places, I'm like, no, you did a bad job. It's just not working. You try to prevent the water to go everywhere, but like. It's definitely not working. It's working if you just like open the water and you let it go. I'm like, yeah, good job. But like someone's gonna need to use it and shower in it. Like that's not working at all.
Yes, totally agree.
Anyway, showers aside, you mentioned, and it's interesting because I wanted to bring this into discussion. You worked at Amazon for nearly 7 years. From your LinkedIn profile, from what I can see, you were Alexa evangelist and also chief technology evangelist at Alexa. Can you share a little bit about your experience working for Amazon, but also like in that specific role?
Sure. Well, I'll take you on a slightly longer journey, kind of how I got into this too. So I came up as a web developer early in my career. Built lots of e-commerce stuff and like the first Burton Snowboards website and a bunch of other cool projects that ad agencies would take on at the time. And I started anonymously giving presentations about a customer that I was working on or a cool thing that I had built at like local user groups or dev days and stuff like that. And I met a bunch of people that were working for Microsoft and other places. And some of the Microsoft folks said, hey, we like what you're doing. Would you want to just do this full time? And I said, wait, you want me to just go build cool stuff and then tell people about it? And they were like, yeah, that's exactly the job. Are you in? And I was like, I can't even believe this is a real job, but yeah, that sounds amazing. Yeah. And so I did 9 years at Microsoft doing that. And it was a wonderful, wonderful journey. And about 6 years in, they started doing this thing called an innovation week. And it was in the middle of the summer, and you were allowed to abandon your job for a week and build whatever you wanted. And I sat down with a couple of friends of mine, and this was in 2011-ish. We came up with a concept. It was a small kind of hockey puck shaped thing that you could plug into a wall, and you could talk to Cortana, Microsoft's voice assistant. Mm-hmm. And you could add things to your shopping list, and you could ask it to play music and ask it for the news. And like, it was a very useful kind of device. And we took it to the lawyers. That was the whole point of Innovation Week, was to get patents and things like that. Oh. We took it to the lawyers, rolled the whole thing up, made a whole commercial about how it worked and whatever. And the lawyers are like, no one's even going to want this. We're not going to submit a patent. We're not going to do any of that. Great idea, but like, it's just not something we're interested in. I was like, okay, that stinks, but I really loved this idea. And so fast forward to 2015, and just at the end of my Microsoft tenure, and Amazon announces Alexa. And my head exploded. And I was like, that's the thing that I wanted to build 4 years ago. And Microsoft said no one would want it. And they're selling millions of these devices, and it's blowing my mind. So as they announced it, I reached out to some friends that I had and said, how do I work on this product? I have to be a part of it somehow. And so I found my way in as an evangelist, which was, kind of natural. That's what I've been doing at Microsoft. Mm-hmm. And really kind of immersed myself in the tech. I learned so much about AI and ML way before, that was a big topic of the world, and got to spend a lot of time thinking about how to get humans to talk to computers and vice versa. It was a really cool opportunity. But as far as the evangelism and the advocacy side of things went, it was very different than Microsoft. Microsoft was kind of go do what makes you happy and build the things that you are interested in. Amazon was very PR driven. They were very focused on how things worked, and they wanted to make sure the message was kind of pre-vetted before you ever went and did anything. And so as a result of that, I learned a lot about what works and what doesn't work in keeping the company happy, but also being able to get out there and talk with developers about the things that interest them. Because it was often pushed to just like, well, why can't you just be like our announcements engine? just get on and tell them the new thing that we just launched. And I was like, because nobody really cares about that. They want to see how it impacts them, how they can use it, what can they build. Like, that's the stuff that's really interesting. And so we had a nice symbiosis there where those things both could exist at the same time. But right around COVID, everything kind of changed. And I looked around and all of a sudden I found myself kind of alone. Like, we had a team of 26 globally at one point, and they had some layoffs, especially internationally. And then some people had left our team, and I looked around and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm the only evangelist for Alexa anymore. And so things changed. I had to come up with creating my own content and building my own programs. And so I started a YouTube show called Alexa and Friends that was all about meeting the people behind the people that are building Alexa, the actual tech behind it. I was doing a weekly Q&A show, like a live Q&A. Hey, how do I do this? How do I solve this problem? Why doesn't this work? Help me debug this thing. That was also a lot of fun. And I found those to be really effective tools for advocacy, because it gave me, I didn't have to go somewhere or build a big program to interact with our customers. Now, literally every week, they had a venue to come, even if they just wanted to vent at me and say how much I hate this thing. As we've been recording this, in fact, an old friend of mine that I probably haven't talked to in 7 or 8 years in the development world just texted me. He goes, I just saw you got hired at DigitalOcean. I need help with 3 different things. Can you help me? Like, that kind of stuff kind of funnels up, right? And so I found that to be a really useful way to help our customers, especially when we couldn't travel during COVID. But then as that started to tame down, that mixed with live events really seemed to flow quite nicely.
Yeah, I agree. That's really interesting. I like it. Nicer. Thanks for sharing that. This is what I love when I talk with guests. Like, I mean, my questions seem simple, like, hey, tell me about that, but like, they're really like high level and generic that you can go in all directions. And I love when people share their stories. I think it can be inspiring, but also it helps. Like, there's a lot of people that watch the show that are new to tech, so I think it's interesting to, when I have guests that have more experience in tech, to just like, understand. I didn't say you were old. I just said more experience in tech, Jeff. But
right.
I mean, don't get me wrong. We hire someone on our team, amazing young man on our team, and I have more tech experience than this guy has life.
Yes.
Whatsoever. So I reached that point. So I'm not the one who's going to tell anybody they're old.
No. I'm still very young at heart, but my hair color kind of gives it away sometimes.
Yeah, no, it's why I shave myself. No.
Smart.
No, I started to shave myself like 20-something years ago. People are like, oh, you shave your head because you're losing hair. I'm like, the second statement is true. Like, I'm losing hair, but I started to shave my head like 20-something years ago, where like I had a full head of hair. So anyway, long story. It's just interesting for people to hear their story. I think actually I enjoyed that. So thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
On that note, Jeff, we are 2 DevRel people. We could probably talk forever. Yeah. I think I had a pretty good discussion with you. I'm happy with that. I would love if we could move to the demo part of the show. And I'm really excited about that because I know absolutely nothing about the DigitalOcean function. That was not a thing when I was there. So it's a kind of like, for me, it's a new product. So I would like to learn more about that. And just before you switch to that, let me thank my sponsor. Folks, if you are not new to the DevRel show, you may have seen that the icon at the bottom changed. It's not a new sponsor. It's just my company. We rebranded our name because we launched new product, and previously the name of the company was Q First, which was also a product. And now we have more products. So we thought that like we could like rebrand to, be more close to the reality. So Construct is the new sponsor of the show, my actual employer, because basically they give me time to do the show during my working hours, which is for me a really good sponsorship. So thanks, folks at Construct. Thanks, my CEO and CDO, for letting me do that. So on that note, Jeff, the mic is yours. I would like to learn more about DigitalOcean new features. Actually, new for me. I don't know how much they're new.
I'm sure there are many viewers that understand what a serverless function is, but I'll kind of take people through as if this is something new that they haven't seen before. Wonderful. Because for me, in the cloud space, this is one of the most useful tools that in many cases you can use for free on most of the cloud providers that are out there. So I guess let's get right into it. The first thing I want to do is, you can see here I get free 25 hours basically of a month of usage, and that's when it's actually running. The nice thing about serverless functions is that you only accrue cost or time on them when they're actually being used. So if I deploy a bunch of code here and I never run it, I don't have any users or nobody's hitting any traffic, I'm not accruing anything, and it doesn't cost me anything to just have it sitting there. But when I do hit traffic, of course, it'll start to spin the cycle. And so this is a good problem, right? If you have a ton of traffic, you probably have a way to monetize it, which is a good way to kind of offset those things. Yep. So the first thing I want to do is just create a function namespace. So it asks me what data center I want to run these in. You can see that DO has data centers all over the world. I'm going to choose New York 1 just because that's the closest to me. And we'll call this DevRel podcast. And I'm going to say create the namespace. So this is just think of this just like a container for the functions that I'm going to create. So my next step is I'm going to create an actual function, and I'm going to choose Node 18. We'll go a little more modern, and we'll call this devrel function. I mean, I'm probably going to blow this all away once we're done here, but that way I can at least find them easily. So I'm creating a serverless function that I've called devrel function, and I'm going to hit create. So with that, I'm done. I wish that was actually true, but like we have a running, working thing as of now. And so you can see in here, if you can read JavaScript, that basically it's going to take hello stranger as well as any arguments that I pass in, and it's going to create a greeting and say hello stranger. And so if I run this,
can you zoom just a little bit?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually okay. So you can see that down here, it wrote out hello stranger as my output. So if I scroll back up here to the top, I'm going to change this code a little bit. I want to do something more interesting. Let me zoom back out just for a second. So I also like to use if this then that. If you haven't used this, I feel like if this then that and another website called Zapier are like secret ninja tools that every developer should be using, because there's so much power that doesn't require you to sit down and write a whole extra application. So I'm going to create a new applet here, and I'm going to say if something happens, then I want something else to happen. And in this case, what I'm going to do is say if you call webhooks, so if this then that has webhooks, and I want to say if this function receives a web request, right? So a web request was made of this function that I'm creating, then I want to do something. So we'll say devrel function call.
And I need to vouch for if this and that, because as a developer, I love to code things, but I also don't want to learn like 10,000 APIs every time I want to call a new service. And even if the docs is good, sometimes it's just a pain in the ass. So like having a service that like sit in the middle, this or Zapier that kind of like sit in the middle, and you just have like, I'm going to send what I want to do any transformation whatsoever, or call the service, and I'm good to go. Yep. So yeah, if you don't use them, there's no shame to use those services and not having to.
I don't have to learn any of those APIs. I can say, hey, every time these 7 people, if they post a tweet, I want to do something with it.
Yep.
I don't want to have to write all that. I can just come in here, name the 7 people.
Exactly.
And it just makes everything so much easier. So I have, if I receive a web request, then I want to do something. And so the simple example that I'll use here, they have an SMS service. I'm just going to use this here. Again, I could tie into Twilio, I could tie into Vonage or something like that, or I could just do this here. And so this one only allows me to send messages to my phone number on my account. So you can't just like spam all your friends with this, although that would be a pretty cool way to go about this. And I'm going to say, we did the thing. And so I'll create this action, and it's going to send me at my cell phone number an SMS every time that web request happens. So I'm going to hit continue. It's just summarizing and kind of giving us a title. I think that's great. And we'll hit finish. So I have my little app at if this then that set up. And if a web request comes in, then it's going to send a text message to my phone. And we can take my phone and maybe put it right. I don't know if I can't just set it here. I'll hold it up in a second. So I'm going to copy this URL. This is the webhook URL that I need to call into. And we're going to go back to DigitalOcean and blow this away. I don't really need any of this code. But instead, what we're going to say is we're going to have a URL that is my I've been working on my Mac all day, and it's different keys. So I have a URL, and that's the URL that is the one that if this then that just gave me. And then I need to do something like let response equal await fetch. And in here, we'll just say URL. So again, we could get more complicated. We could add more arguments. There's all sorts of things we could do on top of this. I'm just trying to show the basics. And so if I hit save here, I now have updated my code. Now, of course, you could always build all of this locally in VS Code or something like that, even Cursor. And then you could use the CLI to develop and deploy all of your stuff up to this serverless function. So I know many times when I do a little bit of coding in a browser, people are like, oh, this is for children. I don't want to do this. That's not the case at all. This is a very powerful tool, and you can do this from practically any tool that you want to use. So the first thing that I thought would be interesting to do would be to come in and talk about triggers. The way this works is it's a way to make your function fire at a specific time. So let's say you wanted to scrape a website every 4 hours, or you wanted to check somebody's Twitter stream, or anything else you could imagine that you'd want to do on a specific cycle of time. One of the other examples I used for a function a while back was every Sunday morning at 9 a.m., I wanted to go grab a bunch of data from an API and throw it into a spreadsheet so that we had a weekly look at what was happening without having to do any work. And so with functions, I can come in and I can say, we'll call this timer function or timer trigger. And one of the cool things that they have here, I've seen this on every cloud provider that has time triggers for their serverless functions. They ask for a cron expression. And if you're not familiar with this, this is a symbolic way to represent an amount of time. And so what's nice is they actually translate all this for you. So if I say 1 here, you can see that it's going to be every minute, but only on Mondays. And if I change that back to a star, it's every minute always. If I change this to a 1, it's every minute, but only in January, right? So we can see how these kind of play out. This is not something that most of the providers give you. You have to figure out what it means and then kind of work on your own.
And I like that because I don't know if it's, sorry, I cut you, but I mean, I don't know if it's because I don't use cron job often, but I struggle to find like the right way to write like the cron expression. So I'm always in the docs and like trying to see that. So now you have like the real feedback in your face, like what you're trying to do. I like that. Good job.
And that's something that DigitalOcean does really well, right? Is make it easy and obvious as to what you're trying to do. Now they do provide a link that lets you go learn all about cron expressions and how to build them, but being able to take this apart and understand how it works, super handy. So I'm saying every single minute I want my serverless function to run, and I'm just going to hit save on this. So now I have a trigger that's going to run every minute. And if we sit here for 1 minute, we'll see that this has run. But in the meantime, I'm going to work on something else. So remember, when this function runs, it's going to call this webhook. That webhook is then going to send me a text message. Let's see if I can get my phone alerts cleared. Okay. So as I get text messages, I'll show you them on my phone. But that is now running every single minute. What's nice about this is that I have a function that is running a specific amount of time, but there are other things that I might want to have happen, right? So what if I come in back here and I say, I want to create another function. So I'm going to create a second one. We'll call this devrel function 2. Again, they're going to give me that same kind of interface that we had before. So I'm going to blow all of this away. And I'm going to say the same thing I did before. Const URL equals, and I don't remember what the URL is. We'll get that in a second. And then we're going to have a let response equal await fetch and our URL. Okay, so I'm going to save this. It won't work yet. Let me go back to my first function. And every one of them, as long as you don't turn this off, comes with an HTTP endpoint that you can hit. So I have another URL that will point to and run this code every time that I want it to. So I'm going to come back to devrel2, and I'm going to make that my URL. And so now you can see that I'm going to call function 1 from function 2 every time that this one is hit. And so I can then take the URL for this one, and I can literally just copy this and run it like in a browser. But if I hit this, oh boy, I think I forgot a little bit of async. Save. That's usually my problem. Async await always gets you. Okay, we're back to good. Let's try running this one more time. empty. Copy. That should have done it. Not seeing any text messages yet, though. Interesting. I wonder if it's because of the async that I forgot that nothing has fired yet, because I was expecting to have a few text messages. This is another one that I messed up. Edit. Settings. Noting.
You may just have delayed.
Yeah. There's always something, right? You can always find a way.
Always. Especially when you do live demo.
Yep. So I'm looking at my trigger. This still hasn't run, probably because it was broken. So let's do a little testing. This will be good. So this is my first one. This is the one that calls out to, oh, it just happened. So I have fixed whatever the issue was. But if I lock my phone, and I'm just gonna run. I think you can start to see messages coming in here, but I'm gonna run that first function. We should get a text message that says we did the thing. There it is. So what we're going to see, though, is that that's going to happen over and over. So if I just keep running this same thing, we can make it happen a lot more frequently than once a minute. But it's also going to happen every minute. And then because I have this second one, I can take this and you start to chain these things together. And so as you think about building like a real API or a real application that has a number of different kind of code bases or even code paths as you're going through it, this is a nice, easy way to segment those pieces out and have each one of kind of run as their own thing. But a serverless function, even though it's represented here as like one function, just one little code base, you can have an entire node application running here with hundreds of files and lots of different code paths, and all of that configuration can live in just one serverless function. But I think it's very interesting, especially if you have multiple systems all calling into this, to break these down into little canonical URLs. So it's very easy to say, call this one, call that one, do this, and just trigger the core functionality that you're looking to execute on. And with all of these, you always have the ability to pass arguments into them as well. So if you wanted to grab something from one service, pass it through here, have it processed and sent to another one, this is a nice, easy way to kind of chain those together. So that was my demo. It wasn't anything super complicated, but it's nice to be able to see kind of how this works. And I now have like a dozen. I'm starting to get a lot of text messages to say we did the thing.
Yeah, don't forget to stop those after the show, because
yes, yeah, I'll have to go back in and delete that trigger. It'll let me remember me every minute though, so it's good.
No, that's awesome. And you said like, oh yeah, it's simple, but like that's the goal. That's a goal of like having like a technology that makes your life easier and that you can use like in a simple manner. I've been in tech for a long time too, and I think complexity is overrated. We are able now to make things simple, but it seems like we like complicated things, and we always try to like do a new framework or new services that is like way too complicated where it could be simpler. So maybe it's me getting older and not wanted to manage all those shit now, or I just think that like we definitely have the technology, so let's try to use that technology to make things simple. So that's why I love those kind of demos. Like they do one thing and well.
I have a blog post that I owe the world called "No Complexity or Magic," because I think that those two things show up in code and technology far too frequently. And if I, as a user, can't figure out how it happened because you have some magic happening behind the scenes, it's not user friendly. I need to understand how that data got there, and magic doesn't help me, even though you may feel like you're making it easier for me.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And ladies and gentlemen, I need to tell you what we seen during the demo was experience no panic when the demo was not working, at least no visible panic, just like trying to fix the thing, continue to talk about stuff, because that's part of the DevRel job. Like we do live demos all the time, and I would say most of the time things go wrong because it's tech, because we're talking while we're doing stuff, because sometimes it's our fault, sometimes it's not our fault, and it's just live, and you do not need to panic. Nobody's gonna die because a problem within your demo. It's just life as a developer. Like how often you code something, you try to run it, it's not working. I mean, that's the equivalent we do, but live during live stream or during conferences. I just wanted to highlight that it is fine if you do live demo. If you start to do public speaking and things go wrong, again, nobody's going to die.
Nope. No, that is one of the nice things about our work. And if you are working on software where someone might die, take it very seriously.
That's a different story. Though.
I got to work on some healthcare software, and it's a serious business.
It is. No, actually, yeah. Forget everything I've said. If you work in like the health industry or something, like you said, like literally someone can die. But I would say most of us do not. So you're good. You're good.
Very much.
Awesome. On that note, Jeff, I think we are good with the show. A question about Lokesh. So Lokesh asked actually a previous question about like basically before I go to his like latest question. I answer in the comment on YouTube, but I think it's interesting. What's the devrel show? That's a good question. I don't think I introduced the show anymore when I started the show, and I think it's just a good idea to remind people because there's some new people. So the devrel show is basically I always like to say that like it's two friends, either old friends or new friends, talking about developer relation. The focus is often on the guest because I really want to learn about the story from the guest. I want to have those folks share their experience, their career, which is most of the time, I mean, like interesting content because we all have a life. We all have a life. We all have a story to share. And what I wanted to do with that show is like, yes, there is the talking part, but I also wanted to make it even more useful for people in tech. So there's always like the demo part on the show where it can be demos about everything. Usually it's technical demos targeted to developers or DevOps or GitOps people. But I've had guests on the show that were a little less technical, and they just share tips for developer relations folks, or they share tips about how creating great video contents and stuff like that. So anything that could be useful that people can pick up and bring back to work or just like on their own time. So this is basically the show. And Lukesh has two other questions which I think are interesting. Jeff, if you still have time, I would love you to answer those.
Sure.
So the first question is devrel a booming job domain?
That's a tricky question. I think we're in a weird time in the developer relations space. I think that there was a time in the early 2010s where it was booming. There were lots and lots of opportunities, and every company felt like they needed 2 or 3 advocates. I feel like that has scaled back a little bit. One of the real challenging parts about devrel is demonstrating value to your organization. They know there's value there, but it's really, really hard to measure. And so there are tools and there are mechanisms to try to drive that kind of value visibility to your organization. But I would not say it's a booming job domain today. I don't actually believe that developer relations is a job you train for. I think you either are or you are not a developer advocate, and sometimes you're lucky enough to have a job that has the same title. And I've been very fortunate in my career to have that happen. But to get a job in devrel, really, in my truest sense, I believe that you have to be an experienced developer. You have to be somebody that has spent the time to understand how the internet works, how to build software, what the process is, what the infrastructure looks like. I'm not saying you need to be an expert at all of those things, but you do need to be knowledgeable. And so the career path, in my mind, is that you have to be a developer first. And then if you really like speaking about the things you've built and you like being able to build things in your own free time, devrel might be something you want to look at, but it's not something that someone's going to go to college and be like, oh, I want to be a developer advocate. That's not generally how this role works. You are a developer for a while, and then you discover that, like, oh, I think this devrel thing is kind of cool too. I'll go try that.
I kind of agree with that. And for a couple of years ago, it was how can I say that politely, a difficult topic, because we've seen a lot of like developer advocates that had no experience as developer. Chris agreed, developer before being an advocate, 100%. I agree too, for the simple reasons that This job is all about the credibility and connection to humans. So you cannot bullshit your way, and you talk to developers, you talk about everything. So I could do a YouTube video about plumbing. I can definitely do a marketing video about plumbing. Can I talk with a plumber about their job? Absolutely not. I do not have the experience. And our job is more than like just making nice videos. We talk about tech, we talk about complexity, we talk to developers, and to be on the stage, to be on the video, you need to be credible. Or at least if you're not going to be able to do that job for a long time,
Right.
and you're not
Well,
going to be able to be successful.
a good example was my demo, right? It would be very easy for someone to say, I can click those buttons and do that
Yep.
thing. But when something goes sideways, you have to know how to be able to fix it on the fly without looking like you're freaking out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Chris was saying, I love that. You have to be empathetic to devs. If you haven't been in that position before, you will probably struggle. And it's so true, because as much as I loved and sometimes miss being a developer full time, I've not been a developer full time since I started doing DevRel 12 or 13 years ago. I'm still call myself a developer, but I'm not doing this full time. As much as I missed it, it's often a pain in the ass being a developer, because you have to deal with so many things, especially right now compared to, now I'm going to sound old, but compared to when I started, there are so many more technologies and ways to do things, and framework and SDKs and all those things are changing way faster than they used to. So it's it's an amazing job, but I feel like it's a difficult job. And if you didn't live through, like, hey, you need to create a release and you need to do your testing and you have to deal with customers that are, let's be honest, quite often never always happy about what you've done things as a developer, and you didn't go through all those pain, it's really hard to relate to the developers who go through the same issues. So it's why also, as a developer advocate, we're talking about the fact that, like, you need to bring the feedback, like, to the proper team internally. You basically advocate for developers. I mean, I'm also there to protect developers and our relationship with developers within the companies, because you work with all amazing peoples, and but not everybody have been developers, and there is a way to talk to the developer, there is a way to create relation, there is a way to transfer the information, to share the information, and this is basically what we do.
Mm-hmm. Very much agree.
Yeah. I like the discussion when the guest is just like, yeah, you're right, Fred. I'm like, okay, I'm good. So Lucas has another question. We basically answered a little bit, like, what are the skills that needs to get in there. Well, we talk about that. I would just add to everything we've said, like be able to communicate is quite important, because this is what we do. We communicate with people internally, externally. Yeah, I would had put the rest. There's many other things that we probably could talk about, but I feel like it's good enough to get a starter about what the role is. With that said, Lokesh, if I don't say your name correctly, feel free. It's episode 22, I think. So I've had plenty of other guests where we answers that question, and that question will come back, and we're still going to talk about what you need to be a good developer advocate. But I would start with what we just said right now, like being a developer first. So you are technical, so you can talk to the developer. I think it's one of the important part.
Yep, totally agree. And Chris DeMars really nailed it too. If you don't have empathy, it's a really hard job to do.
Yep.
You have to be able to put yourself in other people's shoes and understand the pain points that they have, because they're not there just to complain. They're trying to solve problems in their business or in any kind of organization they're working in. And when they can't, they're frustrated, and you're in a position to help that.
Yep. No, totally agree. So on all those agreements about everything everyone said, I think we are reaching the end of the show. Jeff, any last word you want to share with the audience?
I mean, other than check out some of the new stuff DigitalOcean's got. I want to thank you for having me on the show. And if you want to see what I'm up to, you can find me at Jeff Blankenburg on just about anything. So please reach out if you have any questions or just want to connect. I'd be happy to chat.
Wonderful. So thanks for being on the show. Thanks, people, for watching us live. Asking questions, comments is always one of the part of the show that I really love, to have an interaction with the audience. Thanks also for the people watching the recording. And on that note, oh yeah, Chris, let me share that last one. Chris saying like we're doing some awesome stuff at Do being DigitalOcean. I agree with that. Again, thanks Jeff for being on the show, and everybody, see you in 2 weeks for the next Devrel show.